Hello and welcome back to the third section of nutritional strategies to enhance performance. We will be focusing on dietary supplements for this one. So looking at carbohydrate gels, protein supplementation, caffeine supplementation, as well as sports drinks. So dietary supplements are used by many athletes to assist in performance and recovery. There are many to choose from. They're all listed here at this website, or those approved by the AIS Sports Supplements Program are all listed, and they have been tested and deemed to be safe for use by the AIS athletes. And also people need to test to see whether or not they're specific to their needs of their sport, as well as whether or not they find the supplements personally effective. So they need to trial them in training. So that relates to the next dot point here. They need to trial them in training to make sure that they are effective and that they don't suffer from any adverse effects from their use. Some people don't cope well with carbohydrate gels. Some people don't cope well with hypertonic sports drinks. So let's have a look at these sports drinks in a bit more detail. They've basically been found by the AIS to be the most highly recommended dietary supplement, and that's because they've got some real benefits with rehydration. They promote optimal rehydration, even better than water. They also replenish carbohydrates, so they've got the added benefit of optimal rehydration as well as replenishing carbohydrate stores lost, as well as replenishing those electrolytes that are lost from the body through sweating. So electrolytes actually maintain nerve impulses as well as assist in muscular contraction. So examples are sodium, chloride, calcium, potassium, and magnesium. And we do lose these electrolytes through sweating. So when we drink water, we're not replacing the body with those lost electrolytes, and we do need those electrolytes to maintain those nerve impulses and muscular contraction. So the beauty of sports drinks is that they do replenish these electrolytes. Also, what these electrolytes do is reduce the urine output. So the reason why they do that is it enables these electrolytes, particularly the sodium and the chloride we think of as salts. What that does is those salts enable greater water absorption from the intestine, so into the bloodstream. So when we have that optimal level of salts in our body, of those electrolytes, it makes our absorption increase of fluids from the gut into the bloodstream. And it also enables us to retain that fluid, to keep that fluid in the body, because we've got that optimal level of salts or sodium and chloride in the body, which means that we're less likely to urinate those electrolytes or fluids, out of the body. So they're really beneficial, maintaining those levels of electrolytes. Not only do they maintain nerve impulses and muscular contraction, but it also helps us to absorb fluid faster out of the gut into the bloodstream and retain that fluid in the body and not lose it through urine. So sports drinks, just in summary, have some real benefits. So carbohydrates, we replenish our carbohydrate stores. Basically, we, by consuming sports drinks, can optimize our storage of glucose and glycogen, which creates that glycogen sparing effect, which means that we are less likely to use up our glycogen stores till later in the race. So it's very beneficial for endurance performances. Generally speaking, our carbohydrates are 6 to 8% carbohydrates, through our sports drinks, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Electrolyte replacement is also a huge benefit by using sports drinks, and we discussed those benefits before. And another one is taste. They're often sweetened, they're in palatable flavours, so that means that we're more likely to drink more of a sports drink than water, which therefore makes sure that we are adequately hydrated. So we're going to look at our different types of sports drinks now, and the first one is isotonic. And this isotonic sports drink is similar in what's called osmolality to the body, so 4 to 8%. I'm just going to flick through here. So what we mean by osmolality is the concentration of particles. So if we have our sports drink here, say that's our number of particles, it's the same osmolality compared to our blood. So the osmolality, the number of particles in that solution of sports drink, is generally the same as what our blood consists of with carbohydrates. Whereas if we go back, just so that that makes sense. So therefore, it's the same as the body, same as the carbohydrate that appears in the blood. So approximately 4 to 8% of carbohydrate. Also, they contain electrolytes, so 10 to 25 millimoles per litre. So a lot of studies have been done to make sure that they contain the amount of electrolytes needed by our body. This refers to the osmolality that I've just talked about, which is the number of particles within a solution. And remember that, so that's the number of carbohydrates that exist in the sports drink. It's very similar to that of the body. Also, isotonic sports drinks replace the fluids lost by sweating very, very quickly because they contain these electrolytes. So therefore, we absorb more of the fluids within the sports drink much more quickly than what we would if we consumed water, while also having the added benefit of the boost of carbohydrate. Most sports drinks are isotonic, and examples include Lucozade Sport, Gatorade, and Powerade. And there's a really good, description of sports drinks produced by the BBC. So here, hypertonic sports drinks, and I'll just flick through to the next one as well, have this one here is hypertonic, have a very high osmolality compared to that in the body. So there are a lot more carbohydrates compared to the body in comparison to the bloodstream. So let's go back. So here, hypertonic sports drinks examples, fruit juice, some energy drinks. So they've got a very high concentration of carbs, but a low proportion of water. So therefore, what happens as a result of this really added amount of carbohydrate means that it's emptied much slower into the bloodstream from the stomach into the blood. So that is why they are advised to be consumed with water so that it doesn't slow down the rate of gastric emptying. They're also used to meet the high energy demands of ultra endurance athletes. So when they're carbohydrate loading, hypertonic drinks can be really advantageous. Also during the event, but remember, consumed with water so that they don't slow down the rate of stomach emptying, so that the fluids get into the body quickly. And also to top up muscle glycogen stores in recovery. They can be excellent for recovery. And then the third type is hypotonic. So rather than the it's hypotonic. These are generally known as sports water. They generally contain electrolytes of 1 to 25 millimoles, so they're lower compared to isotonic, as well as lower levels of carbs. So low levels of electrolytes, low levels of carbohydrates. So they've got a low osmolality. So let's just have a look at that next table. Remember the number of particles in a solution. So they've got a very low osmolality of carbohydrates compared to that of the blood. They're not considered beneficial for athletes because they don't contain adequate levels of electrolytes lost through sweat. So they're not really advantageous to us retaining that fluid and being able to absorb the fluid much faster into our bloodstream. So also they don't replace carbohydrates because they're very low in carbohydrates. So they're not considered to be very advantageous. The next one is carbohydrate gels. So they're a concentrated form of carbohydrate. They often come in these little sachets, and they're designed to provide a really high boost of carbohydrate when either when they're carbohydrate loading or even during the event. So they can be quickly digested during the event. They can be pulled out. If someone's on a bike, they can pull them out. If someone's running, they're easy to store, so they're easy to carry when you're on the bike. They're also suitable for athletes who can't tolerate foods, whether it's during the event, before the event because they're too nervous, or even after the event if they're just not feeling that great because they've pushed themselves. So they can be advantageous in those circumstances. They generally do need to be consumed with water, similarly to hypertonic sports drinks because they're so high in osmolality, they're so high in carbohydrates. Otherwise, once again, they will be absorbed slowly into the gut. Also, we have creatine supplements. Now, you would have noticed that creatine didn't feature in the key knowledge here, but it does feature in another key knowledge. So I've put it here, though, in dietary supplements. So approximately 95% of creatine is found actually within skeletal muscle. Most of it's stored as creatine phosphate, which we know is a fuel for the ATP-PC system. And we actually require 2 grams of creatine per day. It's found in animal foods because remember it's stored in skeletal muscle. So it's found in animal foods like meat, eggs, fish. It's often sold as creatine monohydrate. It is available in a powdered form, a tablet, capsule or liquid, or even creatine salts. So there's creatine citrate or creatine pyruvate. And they're often very soluble and sometimes are even included in some sports drinks. And the benefits of creatine are that it increases your creatine phosphate stores, which therefore is going to improve your maximal muscular efforts for different sports. If you've got greater stores, you're going to be able to generate more power. It also stimulates protein synthesis. Studies have been found that it decreases the breakdown of protein within the muscle fibre. Also, it can enable athletes to train harder at higher intensities because of the higher stores of creatine phosphate. And it also increases post-exercise glycogen replenishment. The problem with it is that it can retain fluid, so therefore create weight gain. And some people have been reported to suffer from muscle cramping and even be at a greater susceptibility to tearing the muscles and therefore have not been able to take creatine. Some people it can cause gastrointestinal discomfort. And they're not sure, but excessive use of creatine may cause liver and kidney damage for those who do have a predisposition to those diseases. Don't worry about how you need to go about loading for creatine supplementation. But generally speaking, a small daily dose allows your muscle levels to be maintained. And it does generally depend on the individual and it's not recommended for young athletes. Protein supplements. Generally speaking, athletes can acquire all the protein they need from a well-balanced diet. So by consuming red meats, particularly, they're very high in protein, as well as chicken, fish, eggs, dairy products. But they may require a supplement when they're travelling if they can't access those foods high in protein, or they're unable to prepare foods. They're in a hotel or motel and they don't have cooking facilities, so they don't have protein foods available. The protein supplements also provide less fat, so some people do like to consume them because dietary sources such as red meat contain saturated fat levels. So some people do prefer to take the protein supplements, but remember it is processed protein, so that does deter some people as well. Supplements provide very high levels of protein, well above the recommended daily intake, and they have not actually been proven to provide any benefits to performance. So that's important that there's no scientific evidence that has proven their worth as yet. Caffeine's another dietary supplement. It's a naturally occurring stimulant found in things like energy drinks, tea, coffee, chocolate, cola, and it's been found to increase the excitability of motor neurons. It enhances recruitment of motor units. It actually decreases the perception of effort. You don't feel like you're working as hard. So that is particularly beneficial when you're not feeling like you're exhausted as easily. It increases alertness, which is important for sports requiring decision making. And it also increases the potential for fat oxidation. There's quite a lot of studies to support this. Therefore, providing a glycogen sparing effect, saving those glycogen stores when they're needed for higher intensities. Guidelines for caffeine intake, it's very individual actually with caffeine intake. It may take place before or during the event, depending on the event duration, and it should be ingested before they become fatigued. But some disadvantages, some people can only tolerate a couple of cups of coffee a day, or they may experience an increase in heart rate, blood pressure. They may experience heart palpitations. It may cause them to become over-aroused, and we'll look at that in sports psychology. It may cause insomnia, and sleep's really important for optimal performance, so that can be very detrimental to performance. It may mean that they don't have as effective fine motor control. It can cause headaches, irritability, especially if they don't get enough coffee. It may cause muscle twitching and tremors, can cause depression, and people can experience withdrawal effects.